Next item is under reports. It's going to be a report from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. And I'm not sure if I remember everybody's name. Would you like to introduce?
I'm happy to introduce them and welcome. We have Commissioner Paredes from the Texas Higher Ed Coordinating Board. We have the auditor, I don't remember the full title, I apologize, but Mr. Mark Hale, and then we have Mr. Bobby Lane as well with the audit team.
Okay, and at this time, I don't know which of you or all of you or whoever wishes to speak, but at this time, we would welcome your report.
Thank you. For inviting us to present. And if it's okay with you, I would like to provide my report, and then I think the commissioner would like to come after me and provide just a few brief comments, if that's acceptable. We issued 3 final documents, and I guess I also want to clarify, I think I had a little bit of confusion as to whether I was supposed to address only Perkins or if you wanted a presentation on all of the reports. It's my understanding that all of the reports, is that correct?
That is fine. The reason that we listed it on the agenda as Perkins was because we hadn't taken action on
that.
as a board on that report.
Sure.
But more than welcome to speak on either one.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start my remarks pertaining to the investigations that we provided to you previously, the nursing shortage reduction program and related matters, and then we also issued you a management letter from that work. So I'll briefly summarize that, give you some cross-cutting observations, then I'll talk about, or I'll summarize that, talk about Perkins, which is the current project that we finished, and then some cross-cutting issues, and then I'll turn it over to the commissioner. So our work on the nursing shortage reduction program concluded in a final report and a management letter in November 2018, and question cost of some $260,000. The final report indicated significant deficiencies in 2 areas: the administration of grant program in accordance with requirements, and weaknesses over grade changes in the nursing program. First, the report on NSRP, which is Nursing Shortage Reduction Program, and grade changes. The bottom line is that CBC did not properly and timely account for grant funds and did not have control systems in place to properly account for salaries charged to the grant. Employees whose time had been charged to the grant were unaware that this had occurred. If funds with specific requirements are used, employees paid with those funds should be aware of the requirements and how to account for their time charged to a given program. Second, the other area of the report highlights significant weaknesses in processes to administer student grade changes. Nursing curriculum-related grade changes were made 275 times for 124 students for exams administered in the fall 2017 semester, and the grade changes actually occurred towards the beginning of the next semester, so well after the end of the fall 2017 semester. This changed 8 students from a failing to a passing grade, and about half of the grade changes did not have a faculty signature. All of the grade changes happened after the fall 2017 semester had ended. CBC had no standard procedure for how to administer grade changes. By comparison, practices at other institutions that align with accreditation guidance have grade changes administered through a faculty-centered process, with grade changes to final grades being a relatively rare occurrence. The final report recommended development of processes to administer grade changes to ensure control and authorization of such changes. Next, I would like to summarize the management letter that you received. The management letter is a tool for us to communicate issues that fall outside of our scope, but are nevertheless important to be relayed. The control environment at Coastal Bend College is weak. There were over 100 expenses that we passed along to other enforcement agencies because they were non-compliant and for some gave the appearance of possible impropriety. Some of these questionable expenses noted in the management letter involve the president and members of her cabinet. For example, as shown in the management letter, the president paid herself, as approved by only her, for CBC party decorations and the labor to provide them, with no receipts for the supplies and no breakdown between how much of the $1,400 was for supplies and how much was for her labor charges. A second example is the interest charges incurred by CBC for carrying outstanding balances on its procurement cards. The outstanding balances were carried forward from month to month on accounts because the accountant would not pay Citibank, the card issuer, when no documentation was provided by the card user to substantiate the business nature of the items purchased. As pointed out in the management letter, part of the $1,463 in interest paid during fiscal year 2018 was for 4 charges made by the Dean of Workforce, which at the time of our management letter, the charges remained outstanding for almost 1 year. The college's management response attributed the cause of these events to the accountant for having misplaced the receipts. However, emails from the time period indicate that the accountant diligently pursued obtaining the documentation from management. Other numerous instances were noted where management officials were reimbursed for tips while traveling, contrary to CBC's written policies on allowable costs. When such practices are exhibited at the highest levels, the tone at the top is compromised and a respect for controls and transparency is lost. Next, I'd like to move to the Perkins investigation report that was issued last month. This investigation resulted in question costs of $182,000 that was comprised of 2 elements. Payroll expenses of $160,000 were questioned due to recurring non-compliance issues associated with charges to the grant. Time and effort reports were not signed by the employee and or the supervisor, and notations were made of activities that were unable to substantiate or be substantiated as grant related. One employee documented concerns about non-grant activities, but was directed by the Dean of Workforce that all time must be charged to the Perkins grant. 2 sets of time and effort reports were noted for this employee. One with a mixture of Perkins grant and non-grant time denoted, and another provided to the auditors as the official record showing 100% Perkins grant time. Equipment expenses of $22,000 were questioned due to loss and failure to report the loss in a timely manner, as well as a lack of policy or documentation that occurred at the time as far as the repurposing of equipment for non-Perkins use. The thing I would like to leave you with regarding our Perkins findings is that Coastal Bend College has a history of recurring findings in this area. In fact, we determined that Coastal Bend College repaid the coordinating board $30,000 in Perkins funds from a prior desk review conducted by the coordinating board in October of 2014. For 2 years thereafter, in 2015 and in 2016, the institution was cited for non-compliance with time and effort reporting. And each year, Coastal Bend College provided a corrective action plan to address the noted deficiencies. The present investigation report shows marked recidivism and is the primary reason to place Coastal Bend College under heightened monitoring for both Perkins and the NSRP grant programs. With the most current Perkins report, in total, CBC will have been cited for some $212,000 in question costs for a grant program that CBC has participated in for quite some time, a number of years. The president and the dean of workforce have been a common denominator from a program oversight standpoint. In fact, the president signed a contract with the coordinating board governing
Mr.
CBC's.
You know, we have a deal here about not talking about employees, and when we're talking about about, employee issue. When you name the position, there's only one person can be in that position. It
Sure.
makes it a little tough.
Okay. This point transitions me into some overarching comments and concerns regarding our work at Coastal Bend College. With recurring issues and reportable concerns at the leadership level of CBC, the next highest authority for me to report to is you, the Coastal Bend College Board. In 30 years of doing this work, this is a first because typically the board learns of our results after results have been vetted through a strong control environment supported by the CEO. CBC's use of multiple attorneys to guide the institution in working with our team, starting during field work of the NSRP investigation through reporting presently on the Perkins investigation, is also a first. In my years of audits and investigations, on the rare occasion where issues remain unresolved at the final report stage, it was only after that point in time that other institutions paid for legal advice in how to reconcile views. This greatly increases the total cost of ownership to CBC for these issues. We still have concerns regarding issues that remain unaddressed even after our final reports. These include, as far as the grade changes that I spoke of earlier, the report discussed 31 instances of unprocessed grade changes. And what's notable about this is that even though we've been through the reporting process, management has responded, we've had a number of months since then, there's been no contact from management to ask us for a list of these changes so that due diligence can be exercised. Second point, I mentioned earlier, management responses attributed the cause of certain deficiencies to CBC staff, while evidence indicated otherwise. And that's concerning because if the true root cause of issues remains unaddressed, corrective measures will not be effective. Management responses also indicated a fundamental lack of understanding of the Perkins grant, whereby the response emphasized that employees were budgeted 100% to the grant and therefore time and effort reporting was not required. It missed the point that the evidence indicated that employees were working some percentage of their time on non-career and technical education activities. The Perkins grant requires that payroll expenses be substantiated by after-the-fact reporting and confirm that the work time budgeted for Perkins was actually used on Perkins activity. We have also spoken with the Federal Department of Education regarding our question costs from this report, and the DOE has confirmed that they expect full repayment of question costs. This concludes my prepared remarks, and I will turn it over to Commissioner Paredes.
Mr. Cole, before you sit down, may we ask you some questions?
Absolutely.
Chair, can go ahead and start. And just to clarify, I don't think you can mention anything about personnel, but I think that may have to go into executive session. Is that correct? If you mention anything, so if there's anything that you would like to talk to us about, we can go into executive session to do that. Okay. The other is, how long did the investigation take? Both investigations?
Our investigation began last May, and so we're coming up on 1 year. We had to parse the issues. They were so numerous, so we wanted to get you a report as fast as we could, and so that was the first report and management letter. And then we were able to turn to this most recently, the Perkins grant, so close to a year.
A year. Do you have any pending investigations right now?
We do not have a pending investigation.
You had mentioned some concerns. Are the concerns only related to the grade changes that still haven't been done, or as to your knowledge right now, or are there any other concerns that you may have?
Pertaining to grade changes?
No, just in general. You said there was additional concerns.
Well, my concerns really revolve around the control environment of the institution, some of which is beyond the purview for me to fully address as an auditor, which is why they were placed into